dann kann man Politik machen, aber nicht sowas, was wir da machen.
Naja, wir merken das ja bei den diversen.
Well, we noticed this in the various recent national elections, including in Germany again, that in reality people, the eligible voters, are voting and essentially expressing their opinion that they consider this policy to be wrong. The problem is that in Europe, those from whom one actually expected in the past to engage for peace and disarmament, they did so, but that was decades ago. And in reality now, those from whom one would expect this, based on their fundamental programmatic stance, which is still somewhere in their program, are not doing so. So how should things continue in Europe? Where is Europe actually heading after this war, or through this war? In reality, it's moving to the right in Europe. And both of us, I think it's fair to say openly, you are a member of a socialist list.
Einer sozialistischen Liste. Ich bin,
That was quite deliberate. Quite deliberate. It's not accidental, right? That's how it is. I believe peace belongs to the left. I'm not a Marxist. That's true for everyone. Who sits in a trench? That will be your worker's son. And who is retired? Who will be diminished? The people who already get 100,000 euros a month. They are the ones suffering here. These representatives who vote here, they get so much money thrown at them, they don't notice anything at all. They neither have a son at war, nor a daughter at war, nor a house being destroyed. We get so much money, we get 350 euros per day, just for being here.
Euro pro Tag, dass wir hier sind, nur dass wir hier sind. Also ich kriege das jetzt auch, wenn ich mit dir rede hier. Und,
Well, I get that now too when I talk to you here. And that's roughly the income of 3 months for someone in Ukraine whose son is at war. We need to consider that. And we just vote here for the war to continue and that nothing needs to be done to find a solution. And we create unrealistic stories. War until the end. Well, in the end, Ukraine will be destroyed. And yes, people like us here are doing that. For me, it's shocking. I didn't even experience that in the Iran-Iraq war. Such narrow-mindedness as we have here in the European Parliament.
So eine Borniertheit, wie wir das hier im Europäischen Parlament haben. Ja.
What do you attribute that to? It didn't happen overnight.
Ich glaube, das gibt hier der Ukraine-Krieg.
I believe the Ukraine war is important in the sense that it signals the end of a world dominated by the West. The elites are of course aware of this. These elites like me, who are so internationalized, have benefited greatly from this. They also realize that things will change. You can already see this with the BRICS countries and such developments. You can also see it in the fact that almost no one in the Global South, it's a silly term, Global South, but there's no other word, supports us in this whole matter. We are completely isolated with this whole issue, also with our perspective. They see it as a NATO expansion, the war. We see it differently, accusing Putin of imperialism.
Beschuldigen da Putin des Imperialismus. Die anderen sehen uns als Imperialisten. Also, ja.
The others see us as imperialists. So yes, this is naturally an elite that feels threatened. I believe that's true. Mr. Scholz spoke of a turning point. By that he meant that countries at war should now be sent weapons. In reality, a completely different turning point is taking place. This is a turning point where Europe, as a community, is actually only a relatively small community, no longer a superpower, or doesn't even have a chance to become one, right? So a restructuring moment is happening. And this is evident in the Ukraine war. That was Afghanistan, which we lost. It was far away, and it could be pushed aside, although it also contributed to it.
Das war weit weg, das konnte man auch wegschieben, obwohl es auch dazu beigetragen hat, aber den Ukraine, das kann man nicht mehr wegschieben.
But the Ukraine war, that can't be pushed aside anymore, and with the money that it will cost. I believe these are people who deeply feel that what is happening there is not in their favor, but it's just an elite. Well, and people like me, by the way, I just see it differently. But that's simply because I've spent my whole life outside. You know, now, look, imagine you're an Indian or you're from Kenya or whatever, and you see NATO. What do people see there? We say NATO defends our values and blah, 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 blah. What they see is simply a power instrument of the former colonial powers, mainly white colonial powers. That's what they see. So for them, it's not a story of freedom.
Das sehen die. Ja, also für die ist das keine Freiheitsgeschichte. Die Amerikaner haben in den 30 Jahren zwischen...
The Americans have intervened militarily in other countries 251 times in the 30 years between 92 and 22, according to their own statements. We don't read about it, but if you live in those countries, you know about it, and then they just don't want it anymore. That's why they have the meeting in Russia and not with us or somewhere else. That's just how it is, and we forget that. We act as if we are all alone in the world. If a woman goes there on her own and says these countries are threatened, that they will also be punished if they don't participate in our sanctions, they just laugh about it. We have long since completely lost power over that. We have to act realistically.
Wir müssen doch realistisch agieren.
Naja, gut.